Hello. Usually on this channel, I just show clips of me playing video games, particularly 3DS or PS4. But recently on Sunday, I went with a few of my friends to a game market here in Tokyo, Japan, and we played a lot of really, really cool games. But a couple months back, I was helping my friend move, and we went to Tachikawa, and we actually ended up finding this little store that was actually a business that makes their own board games and card games. And back then, the guy that created what I'm about to introduce you to was telling me about this game called HATSUDEN. Let's see if you can see that. There we go. HATSUDEN. Um, so I wanted to buy it right then and there, but he told me that the game is actually going to be released properly at this game market. So I wrote on my schedule and made sure that the first thing I did when I got to this game market was to go straight to their booth and buy Hatsuden and pay my patronage to this guy that was super nice and just shared a lot of really cool information about the game making process and how excited he was about this game. And I'm excited to tell you just how great this game actually is. So this is a brand new game that just came out this Sunday, just a couple days ago, called Hatsuden. As you can see with each mark, Hatsuden basically means like a power supply. So Hatsudensho means a power plant. So if you can see, like here, we've got solar, bio, wind, thermal, and what is this? Electric and water, hydro. And that's pretty much the premise of how this game is played. So I'm going to do some translation work and tell you guys how you can play this game. So if anybody's interested in importing Hatsuden when it becomes available to the public, I highly recommend it. So right off the bat, Hatsuden is a two-player game. Game times last between 15 and 30 minutes, and it's recommended for ages 10 and up. It's not super complicated, but it is a very deep, challenging game for two players. It has a bit of a chess-like element about it, where you're thinking multiple steps ahead. You're watching your player, what they're doing, or sorry, you're watching your opponent and what they're doing, and you're paying attention to your own floor and where you want to go. Scoring is very interesting, and I'll get into this in just a second as I introduce the types of cards. So here we go. So here's the opening of the box. As you can tell, it's a very small box, as I showed earlier. Inside, we have a little over 50 cards and the instruction manual, and they're tight, nice. They're packed in nice and tight in the middle with easy access thanks to the holes, as you can see here. These are our power source cards. As I said earlier with the cover, we've got 5 different sources of power. We've got solar, thermal, wind, hydro, and bio. These are a very, very important aspect of the game, which we'll get into in more detail in a little bit. But for now, you can see that each one of these cards will eventually represent 1 point in the final scoring. You see the little yellow lightning bolt at the bottom? That is the back side of each of these cards. Lightning bolts represent 1 point at the end of the game, and when I get into scoring, this will make much more sense. But for now, just realize that these 5 cards will eventually represent a point later in the game. Next are the city cards. Each player will receive 2 city cards, and I'll show you the lineup in a second how you create the grid for your gameplay. But realize that the city, just like the power source cards, also has a lightning bolt on the back side, which means that the cities, as well as the power sources, will represent points in the end game. So both the cities and the power sources are very important cards. Next are the play cards. Now, these are your power source cards that are going to go connect from the main source areas, the solar, thermal, wind, and everything else, and connect that to your 2 cities. So these are the actual cards that you're going to be playing with in the game. Now, notice that each of these cards has a number and an icon. And say like the very first card here is a 1 and it's solar. That means that you will receive 1 source of energy or 1 point of energy to your solar grid. And that means that when I get to the grid part of it, there's only two spaces that you can place solar cards on, and that goes for everything else too. So each mark is represented on here, and we got numbers from 1 to 4. So 1 being the weakest card, and 4 being the strongest card. But that doesn't necessarily mean that 4s are the best cards, because you need to balance, and we'll get into that in a little bit as well. The last card on this section is actually the very bottom one, which is the Steel Tower. Steel towers represent 0 points and can actually be connected to any part of the grid. They are not associated by color or mark like the other cards are with solar and bio and whatever else. You can place a steel tower anywhere, and that'll basically nullify that space and basically just make it blank. Lastly, for the card introductions, we have the special technology cards, which are indicated by the backside here. There are 4 of these cards in the deck, and each one of them has a special ability. And the way you receive one of these cards is when you play a number 4 on your grid. So 4 being the highest card you could possibly play on your grid, and you'll be able to draw one of these cards. So the first one I'm going to introduce is the +1 city card. What this does is it adds 1 point to your city, which means that your city can receive 1 point more energy than it normally can. And I'll get into this rule in a little bit later, but just so you understand the rules to these cards. The next one I'm going to introduce is the down special ability. What down does is on your grid, if you play a high card, say like a 4, you can place the down card on top of your 4 and then bring your number down to like a 3 or a 2 or a 1 to kind of save your grid from overcharging one of your cities. Again, I'll go into this more detail later. Next is the Smart times 2. This card can be laid on top of any one of the power sources, on top of the solar card, or on top of the wind card, or on top of the bio card. And what this will eventually do is double the point value of that source. So at the end game, if this times 2 is on top of solar, and you happen to win the solar hand, you'll receive 2 points for solar. And then the last one is the secret card. Secret card, you basically put it on top of one of your draw cards as you're putting it down so that your opponent cannot see the numerical value of the card you're placing down. So say you have a 4 on solar and you don't want your opponent to see the second card you're putting down for solar to kind of trick them. You would put this secret card on top of your second solar card and put it under the 4 to kind of play with your opponent's mind. And again, we'll go into these more strategic details in a second. So to start the game, this is how you set up the table. You've got your 5 power source cards lined up in the middle between the 2 players. You can put them in any order you want. There's no specific order. Just make sure that they're all lined up side by side. And then both players will receive 2 city cards that'll lay down to create a grid pattern. So you'll have a 2x5 square setup in front of you, basically. So you'll be able to place 10 cards between where the power sources are and where the cities are. Now this is very important because this is the main aspect of the game. And I'll kind of coach you through as I do this, but I'll give you a little bit of a insight right now before I get into the details. Basically, what you want to do is fill in all 10 spaces. The city cards can receive an electrical charge of 9, 10, or 11. 10 is the sweet spot. If you're able to get 10 points of electricity to your city, you will receive 1 point at the end game. If you get 9 or 11 points of electricity to your city, it's safe and all of your points on the board will be applicable to your power source reception for those points, but you will not receive the city point if you don't get exactly 10. If you go under 9, so 8 or lower, you'll actually receive a -1 point in the end game. If you go over 11, so 12 or more, you actually have to turn one of your cards on that line over to make it a steel tower and basically nullifying the points of that card. This can really hurt your game, and I hope you are careful when you're trying to try to create a very um, strong attack on your opponent. So this is basically how you set it up. Notice that the special cards are right in the middle between the cities, and then to the right of that is the draw deck. So to start the game, the dealer will deal 5 cards to themselves and their opponents. And in those 5 cards are the cards I showed you earlier with the numbers and the power source marks. And these are the cards that you'll be playing with, and you'll always have 5 in your hand. So when you play a card, you'll draw another one, and you always have 5 cards in your hand. And like I said before, if you play a 4 on the table, you'll be able to draw one of these black cards that is one of your special technique cards. For each player's turn, you're able to do one of 4 things. The first thing you're able to do is construct a power station. And this is one of the cards in your hands. You're able to play it down on your table somewhere between the city and the power source. So right here you see that there is one card laid down between the top city on the player's hand and wind. So this means that you've got one source of energy on wind right now, and technically you are currently winning wind. So if the game happened to end right now, you would receive 1 point from the wind power source. The second thing you're able to do is improve a power station. Basically, what you're able to do is if you lay down a low number card on your grid, say like a 1 or a 2 or a 3, you're able to improve it with a higher card of any value. So you can go from 1 to 4, you can go from 2 to 4, 2 to 3, 1 to 3, 1 to 2, doesn't matter. As long as you're improving the station, that numerical value will change to the top card's number. So it doesn't add the 2 together. The 1 will become a 4, you won't do 1 plus 4, so it doesn't become 5. It'll just be whatever the top card actually is. So this actually kind of goes with the card I was talking about earlier. One of the special cards, the down card, is able to do the reverse. On a normal play, you are not allowed to decrease your card value. You can only improve a power station. So that special card is very important for the player who receives it because they can actually make a very powerful adjustment to their grid in order to supply the right amount of power to one of their cities. Now, the third thing you can do is construct a steel tower. If you look at the grid right now, you'll see on the top row of the bottom player, there are 2 steel towers. And that's because if you look at the rest of their cards, it equals to 10. That means they will automatically get 1 point from the city, their top city, while the bottom row is obviously not finished yet, so therefore their second city hasn't received enough points. But you can see that the steel towers are placed in there to finalize that line. Um, this is both a good and a bad thing, because if you put the steel towers down too early, it lets your opponent know that you have no more strategy for that top row, and they can start sniping certain power source points. So notice the hydro on the uh, on the front player side already has a steel tower on it, while the other player has already placed 2 cards there, making the bottom player's acquisition of hydro impossible. So those are things you have to look out for while playing and using your steel towers. Sometimes it's wise to just wait until the end game to just fill in space with steel towers. So try to be really strategic with how you play with your steel towers. Maybe not waste early turns putting steel towers down when you should be thinking more about where to place your cards. So the last thing that you're able to do on your turn is called a review of your power transmission plan. This simply just means that you choose not to place a card, but you pick up a card. You pick a card from your hand and you discard it next to the draw pile. The trick here is that you have to turn your card face up so it shows your opponent what card you're dumping. and then you're able to draw a card after the fact. So after all 4 of these types of play, whether you lay down a power station, improve a power station, install a steel tower, or review the power transmission plan, all 4 of those end with you drawing a card from the draw pile. And also remember that if you place a 4 of any kind on your grid, you're able to draw one of the special cards. Now, there's only 4 special cards, so after 4 fours have been played in the game, no more special cards will be acquired. So now that I explained all the rules to you, I just basically have been slowly building a proper game ending. And this way I can show you exactly how you can tally scores at the end of a game. So here we have all 10 spaces are filled. So all 10 spaces are filled on both sides. Notice that the down has been played on the front player's side. The secret is played on the top player's side. And that number has been revealed, which means they won the bio section. They hid that from the bottom player. Now, look at all these numbers, and you'll see that the bottom player has the most points on solar. The bottom player also has the most points on thermal, because they have 3 points compared to the top player's 2 points. And then the smart card is played on top of the wind, and obviously the bottom player smashed that one. They had 7 points compared to the 1 point from the top player. And then on hydro, the top player crushed that one with 7 points, while the bottom player just had 2 steel towers, so 0 points on that. And then the bio was won by the top player, who was hiding his 2 card, which gave him 6 points compared to 5 points on the bottom. So that means the bio will go to the top card. And now let's count the numbers across. We've got 2, 3, 3, 2. That is 10 points across. On the very bottom row, the second row up has 3, 4, 3. That's also 10 points. So both of those cities will be points for those for that bottom player. On the top row, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a nice counting sequence there, but that is also 10 points. And then the very top row is 3, 1, 4, 2, which is also 10 points. That means that in this scenario, all 4 cities receive points for their players. But notice the bluff up here on the top, where the +1 city card was working hand in hand with the secret card. So maybe the bottom player thought that the bio was being overcharged. That way, that person would like indefinitely win that one, but they actually ended up playing a pretty low card with the 2 under the secret. But they tricked it with the +1, because the +1's able to make that line's charge go up to 12 instead of 11. But again, even if you use the +1, that doesn't mean that 11 becomes the new sweet spot. 10 will always be the sweet spot to get the point for the city. So basically, +1 allows you to put more points on the grid instead of actually helping you with the city points. So as we tally up the cards, you'll see that the solar, thermal, and wind all went to the bottom player, while hydro and bio went up to the top player. And all 4 cities have been turned over because they all got the exact 10 points they needed to get a perfect charge. So the in-game score here is 6 points for the bottom and 4 points for the top. So the reason why the bottom has 6 points is because the wind had the ×2 on there. So that one receives 2 points, 1 point for thermal, 1 point for solar, and then 2 points for the cities, making 6 points total. So the bottom player wins 6-4. And that's it. I really hope you enjoyed this translation. I hope that the game and how it's played was very exciting, and I hope I did a good enough job explaining how to play it in case you're interested in getting it sometime in the future. So once again, this is called HATSUDEN. There we go. HATSUDEN. And I hope that was helpful. Have a great day, and I'll be doing more of these in the future. All right, bye.